Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men have asked me for the right words to say to be more attractive, desirable, and more of a leader. And I've found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines. Because at the root of a connected and affectionate relationship and being more effective and inspiring at work is your ability to influence others. But most often, influence is not gained or lost with words. It's from what I call the invisible factors. So I created a quick guide for you called 3 Ways Men Lose Influence at Work and with Women, so you can understand how these invisible factors work and what has women and colleagues both more inspired to say yes. I think you're also going to be surprised to find out the moment when your influence actually begins. So grab the guide for free at shanajamescoaching.com/3ways. That's shanajamescoaching.com/3 and the word ways, WAYS. Or you can text ALIVE to 44144. That's the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144. I hope you enjoy the guide and this episode. Hello and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I am here with Tony Cooper. Welcome, Tony.
Thanks, Gina. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, and we're going to talk today about what is possible in business when we lead with authenticity and consciousness. And, I know there are a lot of people out there who are attempting to mix the two, business and leadership. I should say the 4, business and leadership on the one side, we'll call that one, and authenticity and consciousness on the other. And I think it's getting more and more common, but I also think it's really challenging. And you have done a really good job of this and seem to be really excited about what you're up to. So I'm excited to have you here today.
Thanks.
Yeah. So let me give you a short intro before we dive in for those of you who don't know Tony. Tony instigates breakthrough performance for businesses through his fascination of playing the game behind the game. So we'll get into that piece. He brings out the best in business leaders by helping them simplify complicated issues and supporting them to gain new skills and insights quickly. And he's been training and coaching and consulting since 2002 and really driven by the innovation in the service of humanity. He's a serial entrepreneur who's founded and led businesses in both the for-profit and nonprofit sectors and doing his best work with for-purpose businesses. So you began your career, way back when, now that we're getting older, in General Motors Saturn launch team, and you've worked in Silicon Valley. You worked with Fortune 100 companies. And now you are, is it the CEO of MarketForce or the founder of MarketForce?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And maybe just give us a brief moment of, okay, what does MarketForce do? Because the purpose of your business, right, is to merge these aspects.
Right. Yeah. So, in the most boring way possible, we're a training business. So we work with companies and we train a very specific category of work. So if you looked at business professional development, how people inside a business grow and learn, there are 3 really primary pillars that you follow. You've got your technical skills and technical skill development,
yep,
things that you do, right, that makes you good at your job. And then you've got general business skills. That's when you start to become more aware that, maybe you've got some responsibility, people report to you, you have to start thinking about how budgets work and all the aspects.
You have to actually run a business.
Yeah, business itself. And then what people often start to realize is the greatest obstacle for them to really be as successful as they want to. It's the dynamics of working with other people.
Yes.
So that 3rd pillar is the human dynamics skills that you develop, and that's the sole domain of what we train to our clients.
Yes.
And the general idea there is, we're trying to, very specifically, elevate human performance, in particular when people are under pressure.
Okay, so elevating performance in particular when people are under pressure, right?
Yeah. So how do you
that's
bring
where the rubber meets
best?
The road.
Yeah, because it's, and the world's moving very fast. Communication technology moves faster and faster, and people are constantly under stress. And our human biology is not really built to be under constant stress. So it actually it diminishes our ability to perform at our highest level the longer you're exposed to it. And our methodology looks to reverse that.
Beautiful. Okay. So how do you, this is a broad question, but we can get more and more specific, right? I mean, what are some of the ways that you actually support elevating people's performance in the midst of this stress that also has to do with, right, the authenticity, the consciousness? Because I'm guessing that's part of your method or part of what you're actually bringing to people.
Well, yeah, very broad, and you, of course, you throw out an incredibly complex question right out the gate. So let me see if I can simply answer it. So there's an authentic self. So to me, what that would mean is, the ability to bring your whole self to work, right? Not valuing some parts of it and undervaluing parts, or pretending some is there, pretending not other there.
Right. Mike Robbins actually wrote that book, Bring Your Whole Self to Work, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right. Well, because look, we don't get to zip off our human suit when we get to work. And yet somehow people really feel like it's a bifurcated exercise. So somehow you can come into work and not be a person.
Well, I think that's how it was supposed to be for a very long time, right?
Yeah.
That's what people were trained to do.
Yeah. And now, I don't care how well you're trained to do that, you can't. It's impossible. So, and the other thing people say, don't take it personally. I'm like, well, I'm a person.
Right. So I'm going to take it personally.
I don't know how to take it any other way than a personally.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of, the authenticity is interesting because there's at least two authentic selves that you bring to work. You bring, and this is the core of your question, you bring the part of you that is you, the one who has aspirations, the one who has dreams, the one who's following a purpose, the one who wants to make an impact in the world.
Yeah.
And you also have the part of you that's a biological animal.
Yes.
Like you have a biological imperative for survival. Like every species on the planet is either evolving into another species or it's becoming extinct. So we're always looking at a core level, we're always looking to survive.
Yeah.
And there's a part of you that has nothing but a survival context in mind.
Yeah.
And when it experiences pressure, it gets activated.
And that's what most people seem to try to hide.
Yeah. And they're fooling themselves if they think they can hide it. That's the most obvious thing to everybody around them. So, the eyeballs are one of the most powerful organs that we have. They can see absolutely everything. Their only limitation is they can't see themselves. And so we're very good at projecting what we look like to the world, but we don't really have an idea what it is, but it's perfectly obvious to everybody else.
Yes.
Like our blind spots.
How do you help people feel safe then to actually show these really vulnerable parts in the midst of a business context?
Yeah. So back to when you said, playing the game behind the game, the main thing that we work with people around is helping them understand that business is a game. So I don't mean we help people learn how to play business as if it were a game, or learn how to treat it like it were a game, but literally saying it's a game. It's a game. And this evidence that supports that is, if you fail at business, you don't die. So it's non-life essential, right?
That's
it's just something you do. But tell that to your biology.
Right. I was going to say, my biology doesn't always know that.
Your biology does not know that at all, and it will never know that. The only thing that can know that is your neocortex. And so you're always in a battle between what you're intending and what your biology wants for you, which is just survival. And so when it all gets lumped together and you can't distinguish them, the biology will win every time. So we pull it apart and say, there's a part of you that deals with real life and death risks, and there's a part of you that deals with perceived risks. And those perceived risks are essentially built around this game of business, in which the thing that's at stake that you treat as if it were your life is your reputation, your identity. And so if you can't distinguish between those, then it will always be biological. You'll always be in survival. And survival is essentially a break-even strategy that you will never get ahead.
Okay, so if you can't distinguish the difference between the fact that you're attempting to save your reputation rather than your life, is that the distinction?
Yeah.
Then you can't actually get ahead.
Yeah, and even worse, when you're trying to build up your reputation in business, or we would call it your identity.
Yeah.
And that's distinguished from ego, in that ego is self-importance. Ego is a distinction about how great I am.
Yes.
Whereas identity is how valuable I am to you.
Uh-huh.
So in your experience, Shana, my identity is simply two things. It's how much value that you believe I can bring to you, and how much you trust me to deliver that.
Okay. That seems though it would change with every person I was working with.
And it would not only change with every person, it would change with a single person as you continue to work with them. It's very dynamic.
Okay. So not only with different people, actually, as I'm working with the same person over time, constantly changing.
Constantly changing.
Okay.
And it's the only thing that's of importance to manage in business is your identity. And if we're using our survival habits to build our identity, it will actually hurt our identity.
Okay.
So the thing we're pre-wired with gets in the way of us being successful in business. That's why you have to pull them apart far enough to be able to see the difference.
Okay. So to pull them apart far enough to see, and to then not use your survival instincts to create your identity. So where does that leave you?
Well, that leaves you at noticing. So this is about self-awareness. This is about, Eckhart Tolle says that awareness is the greatest agent of change. And so when you can't see it, then and you can't differentiate between them, then you have no ability to grow your identity, like zero.
No ability to grow your identity, right? Or to choose.
It will remain the same because survival is a break-even context. And in reality, it will get worse over time because people are very predictable. And if you can't break this habit that we have called survive this situation, misinterpret the threats inside of my reality. Like we're constantly doing that. Let me give you an example. So when I started learning this methodology, and look, this is not my methodology, I learned it. And I say that for two reasons. One, I'm always very, very supportive of people being skeptical and disagreeing with me. And my commitment is I won't be defensive because I don't have any ego wrapped around it. But the other part of it is I run a training organization that trains the methodology, and I'm an example that you can learn it.
Right, because you actually did learn it and you took it on and it's worked for you.
So as I learned it and I learned about my particular, so there's only 4 particular ways that that any animal survives threats. There's 4 primary methodologies which actually align with our 4 styles. And I was learning what mine was. I objectively got to see it in action. And I'm super lucky I get to work from home. Sometimes that means my kids are here and loud in the background, but I deal with that. And I remember one time I was learning this. I left my office. I walked across the house to where the rest of the family was, and I was in a good mood. It was fine. Everything was perfectly, going great. And then I walked into the room, and then all of a sudden I noticed I heard this really mean voice, no formalities to it. I saw my finger wagging, and I was like, what is going on?
You heard yourself saying this to your children?
Yeah, I noticed that I was doing that, and I started going, oh, this is me doing my survival thing. I'm clearly triggered. I'm clearly operating unconsciously, a survival habit has taken over.
Yep.
And I started thinking, what just happened? Literally 30 seconds ago, I was fine.
Yeah.
What happened? What did my biology see or detect that looked like such a huge threat that I had to start acting like a complete asshole? What happened? And I pieced it back together, and it was something like, I don't remember exactly, but it was either there were, the stapler wasn't where it was supposed to be, or there was no staples in the stapler. It was something trivial. And you go, that's what my amygdala, which is its whole purpose, is to detect threats in your environment. That's what it decided was worthy of saving my life for.
Wow. So that activated this whole survival system, which had you, luckily, you were conscious of the unconscious part. So then you started to be able to have choice. But until you have that awareness, you're just stuck in that behavior, not realizing anything could be different or anything would be different.
Right. And so, you know that, right? Distinctions give us power because they give us perspective.
Yes.
And so just having the distinction that there is this thing called life and death, and there's this thing called a game. And when we play the game as if it were life or death, we can't win the game.
Yes. Okay, right. Okay, so there's no way to win the game from that place.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it gets worse the longer you do it. But there's something about acknowledging that it's not just a game. Like business isn't just a game we invented. Because we invented a lot of games. We play cards, we play sports, we play relationship games, we play mind games. But in reality, the difference between business is the greatest game we've ever invented. Primarily because, one, you can play it for your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's not a single other game you can play all day, every day, your whole life. But the other thing is it's the only game that we invented, for the most part, where win doesn't mean someone else loses. It's the only sport, and so Stephen Covey talked about this, about playing win to win. There's something very unique about business. It's uniquely built to create a win-win outcome, which means I can win, and then you can win, Shayna. Like we can each win.
We can both win at the same time.
And it doesn't detract from each other's win. But if I can help you win a little more, and then you help me win a little more, you and I can figure out how to win in a way that's bigger and better than something either of us could have done individually.
Wow. Okay. So this is powerful. And I want to kind of just bring it to the personal level also, right?
Yeah.
As we are people, as you said, we can't avoid taking things personally because it's personal.
Yeah.
So, okay. So when you go in to work with someone and you say, you have this survival part of you, it's not going to change.
Right.
And so now we have to actually learn how to work with it.
Right.
Then you give people tools to actually work with that in the context of how they're relating to each other as teams.
Yeah. Individually, as teams, and it's being able to see that distinction, to be able to see the difference. And the main thing is, so we have an assessment tool that, it's a front end thing that, runs you through about 20 questions, and it provides an indication of which of the 4 survival strategies you were pre-wired with.
Which you use the most, because I would imagine we probably
So exactly right. We actually have access to all of them.
Yes.
However, there's one that's you were primarily wired for, and if the pressure's high enough, you will always do that one. And that's the thing that you have the most. That's your highest considerations, the things you get most triggered by, and you have your greatest, your strategic response, your mindset that shows up in the moment you lose your mind and you get triggered. Yeah. There's a particular way of being that you are that's not even a choice at all.
Wow. Can you give us a quick, is it possible to do a quick summary of the 4?
Yeah, so we typically talk about it in terms of animals and animals experiencing pressure in nature. So we depersonalize it. Like in order to personalize, we depersonalize by showing animals, and we're just animals, right? So there's 4 survival strategies in nature. There's what we call a dictate strategy, a migrate strategy, a tolerate strategy, and a hibernate strategy. I'll give you a quick example of each. So a dictate strategy would be something is going wrong in my environment, and then I would move toward that threat or toward that problem to manipulate it, modify it, to control it. Exactly. Yes. That's why that style is called control.
Yes.
So think about a rhinoceros. How would a rhinoceros solve a problem in rhinoceros land? It would
with a lot of force
straight at the problem.
Yes.
Why? Because it's got an enormous horn on its face.
Yes.
And you're like, that's my best chance of handling the situation. So biologically built to respond in that way.
Yeah.
And another example, like let's move to the migrate strategy, would be there's some challenges in my environment. It could be threat. It could be weather, whatever, climate.
I'm going to leave. Choose another one.
I'm just going to go the other way. And I'm a bird. So I was given wings to literally fly away from the problem.
Yes.
Then you've got and those are the 2 easier ones to see. Then you've got the tolerators, which are more like, I'm not going anywhere and I'm not really going to do anything. I'm just kind of going to endure. I'm going to outlast this thing. So an example would be like a buffalo on the Great Plains of North America in the middle of the winter, snow for hundreds of miles.
Just hangs out.
Yeah. They're like, what are you going to do? You're like, I got a thick coat. It'll be spring at some time, right? I'll be like, right. And so there's this endurance, but there's a fight going on. It's internal though. You can't see it, right? If any of us know what it's like to try to endure something that we don't want to have happening,
yes,
it's a lot of work, but it's internal. And then the final one is hibernate. So that's a little easier to see. Obviously some animals go to sleep, they can shut their metabolism down, but a lot of animals are built with biology like a turtle. Like when a turtle feels threat, it has the ability to pull itself back into its shell.
Yep.
Right. So again, its biology's given it the right body in order to survive in that way. And yet humans are animals. We got all four of them. Like our species is the only species that got all four. And there's nothing necessarily physically in your appearance that would tell me what your survival strategy is.
Right. That's so interesting, right? All these animals have signs and you can tell, right? But no. And
so without awareness, you would just pretty much assume that every other animal, every other human is wired like you.
Right.
Because I know what triggers me and I know what makes me feel better. And therefore that must be true for you too.
Right.
And so, there's a 75% failure rate. We're wrong 75% of the time because there's three other styles.
Yes.
And there's this really interesting stat. This survey was done by the Franklin Covey Institute, and it looked at what are some of the big problems or breakdowns. Why do strategies fail so often in business? And it said 70% of strategic failures are the result of ineffective execution.
Really? Okay, now break that down. If it's ineffective execution, how much does that have to do with?
What that means is after you develop a strategy, this has nothing to do with the quality of the strategy, the belief of the management team in the strategy. All it means is once you start executing upon a strategy, you put people into the equation. And once you get people working with each other,
that's where
they
it
fail.
starts to break down.
Yeah. And it's how we relate to each other. It's mistakenly thinking what's important to me might be important to you. It's communication breakdowns. It's all of this. And so I just said that so we use a distinction between the golden rule and the platinum rule. So the golden rule is treat other people how you want to be treated.
Right.
Which assumes everybody wants to be treated like you want to be treated.
75% of the people, right?
Yeah. Yes. So we upgrade the rule and we call it the platinum rule, which is treat other people how
they want to be treated.
Yeah. So you can't have your attention on yourself if you want to be successful in the game of business.
Yes. Now, I would imagine that there are a lot of people in business who would say, yeah, but, right? It's like, yeah, but we've got work to do, or yeah, but we've got, things to accomplish. And how do we is this a waste of our time? And I would imagine you don't necessarily work with people who would think it's a waste of their time because they're not the ones who would come to you necessarily. But what do you do when people say, yeah, but we've got business to do, right?
Yeah. Well, the one thing I've learned is everybody's right. I mean, so I one of the things when I started coaching 16, 17 years ago, I didn't know how to I just sort of coach how I naturally coach. I never had any training in it. So I decided, so I was living in San Francisco at the time, and a lot of people don't know this, but San Francisco offers free mediation services to all of its citizens.
Really?
So if you have a dispute with your neighbor, the city will provide free mediation.
Wow.
Because the city standpoint is we'd rather pay for dispute management between neighbors than deal with a murder. It's really simple. And
that's
so
actually pretty wise.
Yeah. So there's this great group called Community Boards that does mediation training and offers free mediation services. So that was my coaching training. I trained on being a mediator, and then I did volunteer mediation in the city of San Francisco for a handful of years to start to understand how to work better with people. And the one thing I learned quite a few things, but the biggest thing I learned was nobody ever expresses an opinion because they think they're wrong.
Right. Correct. Yes.
And everybody thinks they win an argument by convincing the other person that they're wrong.
Right. That I'm right, you're wrong.
Yeah. Like as soon as you can realize that you're wrong, then we can be in agreement.
Right. Then we can end this.
Yeah. And it never works. And that's how stupid humans can be So there's this, people have heard this. So the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result.
Yes.
The definition of fanaticism is when a course of action is not working, redouble your efforts. And that's what happens all the time. That's why people, so these people that you're talking about that are going to resist it and tell me how it doesn't work. Like, you know how belief works.
Yes.
As soon as you have a belief, your brain now has an assignment, which is amass evidence to prove that I'm correct and ignore any evidence to the contrary. And so I can't convince somebody that they're wrong. I can only make them right. And you know what? They are going to be right. There's nothing I can say until they want it to be true. And when they want it to be true. And so that's why, look, we're open to everybody, but it doesn't really work for everybody.
Right. It doesn't really work for everybody. I can get that. So in some ways it's kind of a moot point. And I was going to say, right, you're not working with those people necessarily, but I always am curious to kind of play the devil's advocate, because I believe in the benefit of authenticity and consciousness and communication, you know, in business. So I never want to assume that that's just the way everybody else is, you know?
So I know one of the things that you like to talk about is how do you make business offers to the world that represent authenticity? So look, it's you and I could talk a lot about that. One of the things I learned a long time ago is I love people. I love people's potential. I love creating breakthroughs that help people realize their potential. And I love developing situations in which that will occur for people. And I am a big believer in the power of spirituality in our day-to-day life. So in business, people talk about the problem of work-life balance.
Yeah.
And I always go, it's not the equation you should be messing around with. Like the closer thing to play with is mind-body balance. Like that's actually a much closer thing. But the person who expressed it the best is Eckhart Tolle when he says, we're human beings and we need to balance our human with our being. And so the human part is the fear-driven, ego-driven, survival-driven, biological, imperative, creature.
Yes.
And the being part is our spiritual nature.
Yes.
And we need both. And so what I learned about business is, and I've been an entrepreneur for 25 years, and I've learned so many lessons. And one of the main things I've come up with is understanding that you have to solve the problems that people know they have, and you have to sell people what they already want to buy.
Yes.
Like you can't, like if I think what they need is some spiritual awakening, like a little 2x4 across the face.
Yeah. But they don't know that that's,
not only do they not know it, they actually think they don't want that. So, I love the whole ancient story of the Trojan horse. And it's a metaphor I've used a lot in business, which is the horse is what people want to buy.
Yes.
And the soldiers inside are the thing that they need.
Yes.
And so you have to package the solution inside of something that they want to consume.
Right.
So if
you're packaging the solution of becoming more conscious, becoming more aware, becoming more collaborative, inside this marketable package of here's how your teams can become more effective, more productive, more high performing.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And so we sell business performance.
Yes.
But what I know is that it won't work unless they become better humans.
Yes.
Like the mere fact that they become better humans by caring about other humans and then creating a virtuous environment in which we support each other's growth is the only way that business success happens.
I love that.
They actually can't produce good business results unless they become good humans.
Yeah. And I think that's becoming more and more obvious in the world. I mean, even, huge companies like even Amazon, Zappos, whatever. I mean, they are based in, or at least they're attempting, right, to care about the customers, to care about their staff, to care, like there's a caring that started to work its way into the business environment these days. That seems like, I don't know, maybe it was there in past in the mom and pop kind of situation, but then as we grew, it seemed to evaporate, and now it seems like it's getting reintegrated.
Yeah, I think it expands. It's like nature; it grows and it expands and it contracts, and a lot of it's driven by the economic cycle. Yeah. When business is great, and and the supply demand curve moves in your favor, people just naturally care less about the consumer. It's more when there's choices and there's competition, then all of a sudden you have to start differentiating yourself, but that's business strategy. That's not like the core spiritual consciousness that you bring. Like you got to believe that if you're doing the good work in the world and you're creating value for other people, that's the best approach to business there is.
I love it. I mean, that just gives me so much hope.
But I want to contrast that with a story that I hear all the time that I don't believe, which is people go, just follow your passion. That's the way to do business. And I'm like, that's bullshit, because your passion's about you. Now, I get that if you're not passionate, like, who wants to work with you? Right. I get that.
But it's more self-promoting or self-aggrandizing if you're actually focusing on your own passion. I
went to school for mechanical engineering, and they quite literally teach you that cliche phrase, build a better mousetrap and the world will beat a path to your door. And you know what? The world doesn't know your mousetrap exists. Why would it beat up? It's so dumb.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you have to build things that are of value to other people.
Right.
And so I actually, it's funny. I ran a furniture design business for a number of years back when the whole HGTV started, start looking at this, like bringing design into the modern day. And the reason I got out of the business was my whole purpose of being in the design business was I thought the world needed more design. I think we are beings that appreciate, cleverness and simplicity, and our environments impact our experience. And I just wanted us to live in a world that was beautiful, that inspired us. And it was amazing is like IKEAs of the world. And like, if you think about restaurant designs and hotel designs and all, we're surrounded now by these amazing design. Like, we are inundated with beautiful design. But when I started the business in '94, that wasn't true. And so being in that place of no, I lost my train of thought.
Well, you were saying that you had this company for a while, but then something changed, I think, right? I mean,
so I was in the design furniture business.
Transitioned.
Sorry.
No, and it's okay, because you were also saying, right, it's not just about your own passion, right? You have to be passionate about something, but it's not just necessarily about you, because you have to give people what they actually want to buy.
Right. Yeah, I've totally lost it. That's it. Now I'm old, Shana. Like, my brain doesn't work anymore.
All right, we can maybe edit this part out.
Yeah,
we could also leave it in and be human, but we can. Yeah. All right. Well, let's go back, because you wanted to make a point about how, or you were making a point about how you can't just go based on your own passion, right?
I got it. Came back to me. Okay. So I'm in this world, furniture design. It's starting to become very popular, and all these, cable shows are coming up, which are all reality shows. And I got a call from a television show called Cool Jobs. Cool. And they wanted to come in and do an episode on us. And I was, and as I'm there, I mean, I've been dealing with customer complaints all morning. I've got production issues. I'm on my computer, just doing like computer things, admin. I haven't been in building furniture, or touching furniture. I haven't been thinking about design all day. And I thought, this is great TV. Like the perception of what it is. Yeah, I would have to completely fabricate what my job was in order for it to be interesting.
In order for it to be a cool job.
Yeah. So that's where I started, kind of contemplating the idea of like cool jobs, and that, people think about this a lot. Like, what do I want to do for a living? Where's my passion? How do I represent myself? And I think it's the wrong question, because I think people are looking for a career or looking for a job that would be, I use the word noble.
Yes.
Like noble, like a noble expression of who I am in the world. And I went, that's the wrong thing to look for. Like, there are no noble jobs. There are no noble careers.
Okay.
There's only the nobility that you bring to what you do. Because think about everything that you would think of as like as a noble career, a noble job, like anything from being a religious or spiritual leader to being a politician,
nurse, doctor,
being a nurse, teacher. Like, there are good people and bad people in all of those roles.
So people who are doing them nobly and people who are doing them for their own reasons.
Yeah. And if you extrapolate that, you go, I could be a street sweeper.
Uh-huh.
And if I brought a level of nobility, if I got super clear on what my unique gift was, and I cultivated that gift, and I saw my job as giving that gift to the world, and I did it as a street sweeper or as a lifeguard or as a pie maker, it like doesn't matter.
Huh. So what's the question to ask ourselves then?
What nobility can you bring to what you do?
Uh-huh.
What is it about you that makes a difference? Because whatever pursuit you find yourself in, you will bring that magic to it.
Mm. So it's what is it about you that makes a difference? So there's a consideration of what you're actually passionate about or what your gifts are or whatever. Mm-hmm. But then it's right. How can you help have that impact other people, or how
that's the connection
be for the good of the world?
Yes. Yeah. So the word, we use the word ambition a lot in our work, because there's this interesting matrix that looks at 4 primary moods that we all have about the world. And these aren't feelings or emotions, but they're these pervasive background conversations about how we feel about the future. One of them is ambition. And actually it's the one that we want to build all of our teams and our experiences around, is people who are ambitious. And people who are ambitious have 2 characteristics in them. One is they're very good at accepting the realities of their circumstances. That they accept that the way things are is the way things are. They're not in a complaint about it. They just see them for what they really are. But they remain open to the possibility that it could be different.
Is that the second part?
Yeah, that the second part is that they remain open to the possibility that could be different, and they see themselves as the vehicle to bring that forth. To
bring that change or to bring that forth. I love it.
Right.
I love it. Well,
but ambition though got a really bad reputation in the 80s.
Yes.
Wall Street, all the sort of insider trading stuff that started to evolve and coming out. And ambition was a 20th century version of ambition was, I know what I want and I get it.
I take it. It doesn't matter the impact on other people.
And then you kind of go, here it is 30 years later, 40 years later, we're dealing with the Me Too movement. Well, there's a direct correlation there. Yeah. 21st century ambition is I know who I am and I give it. I love it. And so
we could keep talking about this for hours and hours, and we have to start wrapping it up. So much good. There's so much good here. I'm so grateful to hear all of these things that you're saying. And each one of the little nuggets of wisdom that you've given is mind-blowing and opening and expanding my mind, and I'm sure the listeners too. So for now, and maybe we can do a part 2, and we've talked about other things we would talk about. So for now, what do you want to leave people with, especially in the realm of that authenticity and consciousness can be brought into business, and that it actually is one of the main predictors of high performance, right? Or effectiveness.
Right. Yep. The number one thing that people could do to shift their reality and their perspective on business is to meditate.
Really?
Single biggest thing that will impact, because it does 3 things for us.
Yeah.
A real meditation practice, like meaning you're dedicated to it. You do it every day.
Do it every day. It becomes part of your regimen. It does 3 things. It helps you develop the ability to be present. And we are inundated with distractions, both internally generated and externally generated. Yes. And they take us away from where we are. Right.
We spend more of our...
We're not present and we're not in the moment. We actually don't have all of our faculties to be able to relate and consider, be collaborative and creative, and all of that goes out the window when we're distracted.
Yeah, you're not even aware of what's happening in front of you. Like you're spending your time in the past with your regrets. You're spending time in the future with your worry and concern. None of that's real. The only thing that's real is right in front of you. And unless you're meditating, your ability to be present is very, very limited.
Yeah.
It also helps you develop the ability to manage your attention. So not just paying attention to the presence, but even inside of the presence, what of the present moment do you want to put your attention on?
Yep.
People ask about time management all the time. And I go, time management is the wrong question. Attention management.
Which is actually interesting. I don't know if you know this, but I created a program on influence and invisible influence. And number 1 is mastering your attention.
Perfect. Meditation. Yep. Number 3, meditation is the ability to create space. So when things happen, when stimuli and circumstances occur in your reality, and they impact you in a way that has you get triggered, your biology evaporates the space.
Contracts.
Yeah, and it literally shuts your neocortex off, and it causes you to biologically react immediately without thinking. Because your best chance of survival is reaction, not thought. Your
best chance of survival is reaction, not thought. Or I guess I might have phrased it as response instead of reaction necessarily. But
yes, same, right?
Same thing.
Just don't think about it, right? Don't delay, act. But that's not.
But you have to be able to act from the present moment and from what you're paying attention to.
And when you get that it's a game, there's a lot of things to consider before you act. And meditation increases our ability to create space in those moments of pressure. And the more space you can create for yourself and others, the more valuable of a business leader you become.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing this wisdom. And again, I believe in everything you're saying. So it's always I always feel validated in a certain way of like, oh, right. All the people skills and the meditation and the mindfulness and the work that I value, I don't always see it happening in the corporate world. So to see you doing this work and actually finding it really successful and having success with your people is just always so, it's just so uplifting for me, that people do matter, that people are at the forefront of business instead of that we become cogs in the wheel. So thank you for doing this work and for validating that.
Well, thanks for inviting me. This was really great. Now I really hope we get to do it again.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope it gives you a sense of what's possible and how good your life can be. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe to Man Alive and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/manalive to get outtakes, videos, and raw footage I only share there. These are some of the most interesting parts of these expert conversations. You can also grab your copy of The Unknown Power to accelerate your career and solidify your confidence with women, because the two are related, and I know you don't have to settle for one or the other. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.